Bratty princess tests his patience, gets marked as his property. The crystalline floor of the Lurian palace shimmered, reflecting the soaring, intricate latticework overhead. Marcus, encased in the indigo armor of the Terran vanguard, stood sentinel, unmoved by the sweet, alien scents and the distant melodic hum that filled the corridors. He'd been raised on Ganymede, where feeling was a weakness and control meant survival. A flicker in the crystal's reflection drew his gaze. Princess Zephyra, her violet hair cascading like liquid starlight, her skin a luminous blue that seemed to glow from within, drifted toward him. She moved as if gravity itself bent to her whim, every step a measured act of defiance against the solemnity that ruled her father's palace. The air shifted as she neared, scented with something like crushed nebula petals and ozone. Her dark, expressive eyes sparkled with mischief as she halted before him. "Still playing at being a monument, Vanguard?" she teased, her voice ringing with a bell-like clarity that seemed to vibrate in his chest. The words weren't spoken alone. Her laughter, airy and crystalline, brushed his mind in a telepathic flutter, testing for weakness. "I am on duty, Your Grace," Marcus replied. His voice, deep and even, seemed to absorb her levity rather than reflect it. Beneath his helmet, his jaw tensed ever so slightly, the only sign he registered her at all. Zephyra's lips curled in a smirk, her eyes narrowing with challenge. "How utterly tedious. I need a diversion. I'm taking the sky glider." Without a backward glance, she spun on her heel, her long violet hair trailing behind her like a comet's tail, and strode toward the sun-dappled balcony. Marcus followed, silent and steady, his steps echoing after her. Her previous guard, a quick-witted Venusian, had lasted barely a month before resigning in despair. Marcus understood. The princess wielded ennui like a surgeon's scalpel, dissecting the composure of those assigned to protect her. On the balcony, the Lurian city unfurled below, a mosaic of radiant towers, iridescent walkways, and mist-veiled parks. The sky glider awaited, opaline hull glimmering, graphite fins arching like the wings of some exotic bird. Zephyra leapt into the cockpit, movements fluid and fearless. "Try not to lag behind," she called, turning, her voice rippling with a psychic nudge that slid harmlessly off Marcus's disciplined mind. The sky glider purred to life and, with a twist of her wrist, soared from the balcony, banking sharply toward the highest spires. Zephyra's laughter, both audible and mental, left a trail of taunting silver in its wake. Without urgency, Marcus activated the controls on his gauntlet, eyes tracking the glider's ascent. She dove toward the forbidden star's slit, a razor-thin gap between two phosphorescent towers, an infamous maneuver that had claimed more than one reckless pilot. Zephyra shot forward, her form outlined in pale blue light. Marcus paused, hand raised to his helmet, voice low. "Override Protocol 7. The command, spoken softly, flickered through the ether. As Zephyra threaded the gap, her sky glider's systems powered down in a sudden hush. The craft hovered, inert and vulnerable, high above the palace, its defiance instantly neutered. A psychic shriek battered his mind, furious and sharp as broken glass, but Marcus's training held. He guided the glider down remotely, every movement careful, denying her the dignity of a daring escape. The crowd on the lower terraces looked up, murmuring as the royal craft drifted back, ignominious, under invisible command. Zephyra stormed from the cockpit, trembling with indignation. "You dare?" she spat, her voice a whip-crack of outrage. Her eyes blazed, energy swirling about her like a living storm. Marcus met her gaze, unflinching. He took her arm, firm, never cruel, and lifted her from the cockpit as though she weighed nothing. For the briefest instant, the force of his grip and the finality in his bearing stilled her rebellion. She saw, for the first time, not a mere attendant, but a force of nature, immovable and absolute. Later, Zephyra swept into her father's observatory, breathless and furious. The chamber, lined with shifting maps of nebulae and ancient star charts, echoed with her footsteps. The sovereign of Luria, his once vivid blue skin faded to a pale, gentle glow, regarded her with the serene detachment of age. "He overstepped," Zephyra protested, her tone pitched somewhere between plea and command. "He humiliated me before the city." The sovereign lifted a translucent hand. "The vanguard remains. He saved you from painting the spire with your insides. For that, he has my thanks. You will end these childish games." The rebuke struck harder than any punishment. Zephyra's cheeks darkened with frustrated color. She realized, with a cold twist in her chest, that Marcus had won not only the day, but her father's approval. Fuming at being overruled, Zephyra withdrew, her mind already plotting retribution. That evening, as the palace's grand hall shimmered beneath 1,000 suspended lights, she took her place at the diplomatic feast beside Marcus. The room buzzed with laughter, clinking glasses, the rustle of silk and synth leather uniforms. Zephyra's eyes narrowed as she watched the Terran ambassador, a statuesque woman with silver-threaded hair, engage Marcus in polite, measured conversation. With practiced subtlety, Zephyra projected a wave of feigned desire toward the ambassador, weaving the illusion so that it seemed to emanate from Marcus. The ambassador blinked, smiled politely, and nothing more. Marcus sat, impassive, as if untouched by the telepathic trick. Zephyra's brow furrowed. She pushed harder, wrapping the illusion in richer sensation, desperate for even the flicker of embarrassment from the stolid Terran. Again, nothing. Suddenly, beneath the table, she felt the press of Marcus's armored boot pinning her toes, gentle yet unyielding, a silent assertion that needed no words. Her breath caught, heat rising as she realized, for the first time, his control was absolute. Her challenge had been met, and for now, bested. The palace gardens, a marvel of Lurian bioartistry, became the next stage. Zephyra reclined beneath a crystalline arch, her violet hair braided with luminous petals, enduring the sovereign's minister as he droned on about trade protocols and grain tariffs. The air shimmered with floral scents and the faint chime of living sculptures, yet Zephyra's mind wandered, every word another drop of tedium. Then, a thunderous explosion split the afternoon. Shards of an iridescent sculpture rained across the assembly, the crystalline melody shattering into discordant screams. Zephyra jerked upright as panic surged through the crowd, nobles and dignitaries scattering, their formal silks and armor clashing in chaos. Masked attackers surged from the smoke, bearing the crimson and obsidian crest of House Dravak. They opened fire, energy bolts crackling against marble and flesh. Zephyra froze, the world narrowing to the blaze of plasma and the metallic tang of fear. Marcus was in motion before thought. He slammed her behind a crystal barrier, his armored bulk a shield between her and death. The first shot struck his backplate with a flash, sizzling against the alloy, scorching a black starburst into the indigo. Zephyra flinched, heart stuttering. He turned, voice low and controlled. "Stay down." Marcus drew his weapon, sleek Terran steel, its edges humming with restrained lethality. He moved through the chaos like a force of nature, each step precise, every motion born from years of training on Ganymede's brutal frontiers. 3 attackers fired in unison. Marcus sidestepped, returning fire in crisp, controlled bursts. One Dravak fell, then another, his mask shattering as he collapsed. The last tried to rush Zephyra, but Marcus was faster, intercepting with a crushing blow that sent the assailant sprawling. Zephyra's mind reeled as Marcus seized her arm, pulling her into a sprint through the gardens. Screams echoed, smoke coiling between the trees. They plunged into a corridor of flowering glass vines, then through a hidden door that sealed behind them with a hiss. They entered the safe chamber, a sterile, windowless room bathed in blue-white light. The silence was absolute, broken only by Zephyra's ragged breaths and the faint hum of security fields. She slumped onto a bench, hands trembling as adrenaline ebbed. Marcus stood with his back to her, checking his weapon, his armor still smoldering. She stared at the blackened scorch on his backplate, her thoughts unmoored. He had shielded her, without hesitation, without calculation. For the first time, she truly saw him, immense, immovable, his presence more real than the palace itself. She realized her arrogance, her games, meant nothing against the raw certainty of his protection. "Are you hurt?" Marcus's voice, steady and quiet, cut through her thoughts. Zephyra blinked, shaking her head. "No, you took the shot." He nodded once, as if that explained everything. "It is my duty." The room was cold, yet she felt a strange warmth, an unfamiliar sense of security. Her hands still shook. They wore Dravak colors. Why? "Political escalation," Marcus said. "An attempt to destabilize the sovereign, perhaps blame the Terrans for your death." The door opened. 2 armored guards and the sovereign's aides swept in, ushering Zephyra and Marcus to the council chamber. The sovereign sat at the head of a long crystalline table, his ancient eyes grave, the counselors arrayed in nervous silence. The security chief reported first. "House Dravak has claimed responsibility. Their transmission accuses the Terran vanguard of plotting against the royal line." The sovereign's voice was iron wrapped in velvet. "It is a fabrication. They seek to fracture the alliance and seize the throne." Marcus remained impassive, but Zephyra saw a flicker of something, anger perhaps, or the cold calculation of a soldier appraising a new front. The sovereign turned to his daughter. "This is no longer a mere game, Zephyra. The danger is real, and growing." She lifted her chin, defiant. "You would lock me away? Make me a prisoner in my own home?" "Not a prisoner." The sovereign's gaze swept from her to Marcus. "A sentinel's pact must be invoked. The ancient rite will bind the vanguard to you. No assassin, no intrigue, will come between you and your protector." Zephyra's eyes widened. "A relic, symbolic, nothing more." The sovereign shook his head. "Not merely symbolic. Our priestess will explain." A figure glided into the chamber, her robes woven from living silk, eyes burning with the light of forgotten stars. The priestess bowed. "The Sentinel's pact is older than the palace itself. The bond is forged by nanites, living filaments that will entwine your nervous systems, every thought, every sensation, every emotion, shared. The protector becomes the shield and the cage, for both." Zephyra's lips curled in a mocking smile. "And if I refuse?" The priestess met her gaze, unblinking. "You may refuse, but the next attack may not be foiled. To claim him as yours is to become his cage, and his yours." Zephyra turned to Marcus, mischief flickering in her eyes. "Very well, I accept. Let all see the mighty Terran bound to the Lurian line. Let him share my every whim, my every feeling. I hope you're ready, Vanguard." Marcus inclined his head. "I am ready, Your Grace." The priestess gestured for silence. "It is done then. Prepare for the rite." Later, in the cold chamber of rites, the air thrummed with ancient power. Marcus knelt opposite Zephyra on a dais of living crystal. His armor was gone, stripped to the waist, revealing a body mapped by scars and sinew, a testament to a life spent in war. The mark of the Terran vanguard glimmered over his heart. Zephyra's silk gown slipped from her shoulders as the priestess brushed her skin with a glowing salve. She felt exposed, vulnerable, the ceremonial runes pulsing like liquid fire along her collarbone and down her arms. The priestess spoke in a tongue older than the city, her hands tracing sigils that glowed blue and white. Nanites, sparkling like tiny comets, danced from her fingers and burrowed into Zephyra's flesh. She gasped as pain seared through her nerves, a lance of heat, then cold, then a rush of something indescribable. She fell forward, catching herself with trembling hands. Her mind reeled as a torrent crashed through her. Gravity, discipline, endless control. The relentless pressure of Ganymede's gravity, the iron will of a soldier, the isolation of command. She saw flashes of Marcus's memories, bitter training fields, silent nights staring at alien skies, the ache of loneliness so deep it scarred. Marcus shuddered, fists clenched. He was assaulted by a symphony of sensation, brilliant colors and music, the euphoria of Zephyra's joy, the crushing ache of her loneliness, her desperate hunger to be seen, to be free. For a heartbeat they were one, her longing echoing in his marrow, his resolve steadying her wildness. The priestess's voice anchored them. "It is done. The bond is forged. You are sentinel and sovereign's heir, each bearing the mark of the other." A sigil glowed on Zephyra's wrist, Marcus's crest, etched in living light. On Marcus's shoulder, the Lurian star blazed anew. Breathless, Zephyra met Marcus's gaze, seeing herself reflected in his storm-gray eyes. The chamber was silent but for the mingled rhythm of their hearts, no longer wholly separate, never again truly alone. The days after the bond were an orchestra of shared sensation and irritation. Zephyra, accustomed to privacy and indulgence, found her world intruded upon by the foreign weight of Marcus's discipline. When she tasted nectar, honey bright, chilled in a crystal cup, he tasted it too, the sweetness echoing at the back of his tongue as he polished his armor. When he trained in the pre-dawn hours, muscle straining, heart pounding beneath Ganymede's gravity, Zephyra felt the ache in her limbs, the burn in her lungs. She scowled into her pillow, cursing the ancient right that had fused her to this immovable force. She retaliated as only a princess of Luria could. Each morning she woke him with a blast of music, frenetic, dazzling, Lurian symphonies that shimmered with alien harmonies. She flooded the bond with tastes, rare fruits, sour and electric, spiced wine that lingered on the palate, exotic delicacies from the farthest moons. She even conjured simulated escapades, memories of wild, reckless nights spent dancing atop sky bridges, of plunging into phosphorescent seas, of lovers' whispers beneath the twin moons. Every sensation was a riot, an assault, a declaration that she would not be subdued. Marcus endured it all. His mind remained a fortress, every intrusion met with calm, unbreakable patience. Sometimes he would glance at her, expression unreadable behind his visor, but his voice remained steady. "You will tire yourself, Your Grace." He never retaliated, never lost composure, even when she pushed so hard her own senses spun. Yet beneath his discipline, she could feel the thrum of his vigilance, the way he catalogued every threat, every flicker of movement at the palace's edge, the ceaseless scan of his senses. The tension in his muscles became her own, the relentless vigilance like being chained to a mountain, vast and silent. At first, Zephyra hated it. She found herself flinching from shadows, her thoughts dragged inexorably toward discipline and caution. She could not taste wine without feeling the metallic edge of weapon oil, nor dance without sensing the ache of bruises along Marcus's ribs. Yet, as days passed, something changed. The fortress of his mind became familiar, unyielding, yes, but steady. When she raged or sulked, his presence was there, silent and constant, an anchor in the storm. One night, haunted by the memory of the attack, Zephyra woke screaming, tangled in silk sheets. The nightmare had seized her, blinding light, the crack of weapons, blood-staining crystal. Panic surged through the bond, raw and uncontrollable, a current of terror that threatened to drown them both. Marcus entered her chambers without a word. The moonlight cast him in silver and indigo, eyes calm, armor set aside. He crossed to her bed and sat beside her, careful not to startle her further. Zephyra tried to pull away, but his hand settled on her arm, firm, grounding. "Breathe," he murmured, the word a command and a promise. He imposed calm through their link, a tide of steady breathing and slowed heartbeats. His discipline became her own, threading into her panic, unwinding it knot by knot. His heart beat slowly, evenly, and she matched him, her own pulse falling into rhythm. The terror receded, replaced by something deeper, an intimacy without touch, a surrender she had never allowed herself. For the first time, Zephyra let herself lean into his control, letting the wave of tranquility drown her fears. She closed her eyes and for a moment felt utterly safe. "Thank you," she whispered, barely trusting her voice. Marcus's hand lingered a moment longer before he withdrew. "You are not alone, Zephyra. Not anymore." She watched him go, her heart unsettled in a way she could not name. The next day, the palace buzzed with anticipation. The grand atrium had been transformed for the treaty signing, floors polished to mirror brightness, banners of Lurian blue and Terran silver unfurled, diplomats arrayed in formal splendor. Zephyra stood at the sovereign's side, Marcus at her shoulder, his senses scouring the crowd for any sign of threat. A hush fell as the ambassador from House Dravak entered, flanked by guards. Dravak himself strode forward, tall and lean, his eyes cold as moonstone. Zephyra's skin prickled. Through the bond, she felt Marcus tense, a coiling of muscle, a tightening of focus. Suddenly, all pretense shattered. House Dravak's soldiers sprang into action, weapons drawn, red sigils flaring. Dravak himself produced a small, spined device and slammed it to the floor. It pulsed, a wave of psychic agony radiating outward. Zephyra screamed as pain knifed through her mind, and Marcus staggered, his defenses battered by the assault. The bond became a conduit for suffering. Pain doubled, amplified. Zephyra tasted copper and fire, her thoughts splintering. Marcus gritted his teeth, forcing himself upright. "Shield the sovereign," he growled, voice laced with agony. She clung to him through the link, searching desperately for clarity. She saw the room through his eyes. Attackers fanning out, energy bolts sizzling past columns. Instinct took over. She poured her telepathic awareness into the bond, mapping the positions of every hostile mind. Marcus's vision sharpened, guided by her perceptions. They moved as one, back to back, a perfect fusion of mind and body. Marcus fired at the Dravak soldiers flanking the dais, Zephyra feeding him warnings. Left, and he pivoted, blocking a blade with his gauntlet. They slipped through the chaos, each thought shared, each intention mirrored. Dravak advanced, activating the psychic device to its full power. The pain became unbearable, a white-hot crescendo that threatened to tear the bond apart. Zephyra felt Marcus's will holding them together, an unbreakable wall. She anchored him with flashes of memory, her joy, her laughter, the taste of nectar and the feel of starlight on her skin. Pinned behind a toppled pillar, their enemies closing in, Zephyra gasped. "We can't hold—" Marcus pulled her to him with sudden force, their faces inches apart, his eyes blazed, not with pain, but with desperate resolve. In a single fierce motion, he pressed his mouth to hers, the kiss rough and possessive, carrying all the fear and fury and longing of the moment. A shockwave tore through the bond, obliterating the pain. Every barrier between them dropped. She tasted him, iron and salt and heat, felt his arms anchoring her, as if she were the only thing that mattered in the universe. The agony vanished, replaced by electric connection, a fusion more complete than any ritual. When the kiss broke, Zephyra's breath came in ragged gasps. Marcus's grip was steady, his voice low but unbreakable. "We are stronger together, always." She nodded, and together they rose, ready to finish the fight, bound by more than duty, more than blood, more than fate itself. With Zephyra feeding him tactical data via the bond, Marcus moved with uncanny precision, taking down Dravak's soldiers. Her mind became a silent chorus in his head. Shouts of warning, flickers of intent, the ghost of each attacker's next move before their bodies committed. Through the chaos, Marcus became a living weapon, not merely fast, but inevitable. 3 on your right, now! Zephyr's thought cut through the pain still echoing in their shared nerves. Marcus pivoted, blaster raised. He fired in a controlled arc, dropping the closest assailant. Another soldier lunged from behind a shattered pillar. Zephyra flared a mental alarm. Marcus spun, catching the attacker's arm, wrenching it sideways until bone snapped. A clean, efficient motion. The man fell with a cry. Smoke curled through the grand atrium, scattered with the bodies of diplomats and Dravak loyalists alike. Crystal columns pulsed with the warning red of the palace's alert. Yet in the maelstrom, Marcus and Zephyra moved as a single, seamless force. Her mind his sight, his strength her shield. Ahead, a knot of Dravak soldiers regrouped, raising weapons. Zephyra pressed close, clutching Marcus's arm. "Wait," she whispered, the thought twining with her voice. "They're afraid." "They're not loyal to Dravak, only terrified." Marcus paused, lowering his weapon just enough. "If you can reach them, do it." Zephyra stepped forward, radiating command, her presence amplified through the bond. "Stand down," her voice thundered, both out loud and telepathically. "This coup is over. Lay down your arms. I will show mercy." The nearest soldier faltered, gun wavering. Zephyra sent a surge of reassurance, images of safety, hope, a future not written in blood. The man dropped his weapon, hands raised. Another followed. Others hesitated, caught between fear and loyalty. Behind them, Dravak's voice rang out, sharp as a blade. "Cowards! Traitors!" He surged forward, cloak billowing, eyes wild. "The throne belongs to Dravak. She is nothing." The soldiers looked between Zephyra and their furious commander, uncertainty gnawing at the edges of their loyalty. Zephyra held her ground, chin high, gaze steady. "You have a choice," she said. "Luria or oblivion." With a clatter, the last of the uncertain guards lowered their weapons and stepped back. Marcus took a measured breath, never dropping his guard. Only Dravak remained. Desperation warped his features. He drew a blade, ancient, serrated, humming with dark energy, and lunged straight at Zephyra. Time slowed. Through the bond, Zephyra felt the spike of his murderous intent, the sharp edge of her own fear. But she did not flinch. Marcus moved with lethal finality. He interposed himself, catching Dravak's wrist mid-strike. The two men locked eyes. A heartbeat struggle. Then Marcus twisted. Dravak's wrist broke with a wet crack, the blade falling to the floor. With one more brutal motion, Marcus swept Dravak's legs out from beneath him and drove him to the ground, pinning him effortlessly. Silence crashed down, heavy and absolute. Zephyra exhaled, shaking, her vision blurred by adrenaline. Through the bond, Marcus radiated calm and triumph, anchoring her in the aftermath of violence. Guards rushed in, securing the surrendered soldiers and dragging Dravak to his knees before the sovereign, who had entered during the final moments of the coup. The old ruler surveyed the carnage with grave eyes, his luminous skin flickering in the aftermath. The sovereign approached, his gaze settling on Marcus. "You have my gratitude, Vanguard," he said, voice ringing with authority. "You anchored my daughter, as you anchored this court. I chose you for your strength, your discipline, qualities she could not destroy, but perhaps could one day cherish." Zephyra stiffened, wounded pride and awe tangled in her chest. "You used me as a lesson?" she demanded, her voice trembling. Her father's expression softened, old sorrow etched in the lines of his face. "I did not wish only to protect your body, Zephyra. I wanted to forge your spirit. You are heir not just to a throne, but to a legacy of endurance. Marcus gave you what I could not, the strength to master yourself." For a moment, Zephyra stood silent, anger ebbing, replaced by something unfamiliar, Understanding, perhaps, or the first glimmer of respect. She looked at Marcus, searching his storm-gray eyes for mockery or judgment. She found only quiet acceptance and a reflection of her own transformation. The council room filled with the clamor of officials, healers, and guards. Yet Zephyra felt the press of eyes and words as distant as another world. She nodded curtly to the sovereign, then turned, gathering the shredded remnants of her dignity. "Come," she said to Marcus, voice low and controlled. He followed her through winding corridors, past the silent, shell-shocked staff, to the sanctuary of her private chambers. The doors slid shut behind them, muffling the chaos of a court trying to right itself. Inside, Zephyra dismissed her attendants with a flick of her hand. "Leave us," she commanded, her tone brooking no argument. The bond thrummed between them, exhaustion, relief, and a possessive satisfaction that neither could deny. No more games, no more masks. They stood alone amid the muted glow of her room, the air thick with unspoken words. Zephyra turned her back, letting her gown slip lower, revealing the luminous rune etched between her shoulder blades. "It burns," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "But it doesn't hurt." Marcus stepped closer, his presence as steady as always, yet softer now, almost reverent. He reached out, his fingers tracing the glowing symbol through the fabric. Through the bond, both felt the sensation, his touch and her skin, merged in a single current of heat and certainty. She shivered, not from cold but from the intensity of their connection. "Is it a prison?" she asked, voice trembling. "Or something else?" Marcus drew her gently around to face him, his thumb brushing the edge of the rune. "Not a prison," he said, his tone fierce with conviction. "A union. One soul marked by another. You are not caged, Zephyra. You are chosen." She closed her eyes, letting herself lean into the certainty that flowed from him. The bond pulsed, shared exhaustion, relief, and something deeper neither dared name. When she opened her eyes again, she saw herself in his, not as a tempest or a burden, but as an equal. They stood in silence, hearts and minds entwined, the marking on her back glowing softly between them. A promise forged in fire, no longer a shackle, but a vow. A year passed. The grand atrium still bore the scars of the past conflict, hairline cracks in the crystal columns, a darker gleam in the reconstructed floor. But the bond between Marcus and Zephyra had only deepened. Where once her presence filled the palace with mischief and provocation, now Zephyra moved with the poise of command. She stood at the center of the council chamber, the sovereign's throne empty behind her, every eye in the hall fixed on her. "Trade with Saturn's outposts must be recalibrated. I propose a rotating delegation to negotiate transit rights, beginning with the Terran ambassador," Zephyra announced, her voice even, every word precise. The counselors murmured approval. Zephyra scanned the assembled faces, her logic sharpened by a year of hard lessons, by the discipline and clarity that lived inside her now. Marcus stood a step behind her, clad in ceremonial indigo armor, a silent anchor in the room's shifting tides. Through the bond, he felt her triumph as if it were his own, a surge of satisfaction, tempered by vigilance. Her focus sharpened as she fielded questions, parried objections, and reshaped policy with cool assurance. Marcus's presence was a steady weight at her back, a bulwark against the council's doubts. Afterward, as the counselors dispersed, Zephyra lingered by a window overlooking the scarred atrium. Marcus moved to her side, their reflection merging in the glass. "You handled them," he said, pride thrumming in the link. Zephyra turned, her smile gentle. "We handled them. I still feel your thoughts, Marcus. They steady me." He offered a faint private smile. "You have become your own anchor, Zephyra." She glanced down, running her fingers over the glowing rune on her wrist, a sigil that pulsed with shared memory. "Still, I want to know more about you." About the world that made you what you are. He stiffened, a flash of old unease rippling through the bond. Ganymede is not for the faint of heart. It's gravity. She interrupted, her tone as resolute as ever. If it is part of you, then I must see it. Marcus hesitated. He saw in her eyes the same wild resolve that once made her a terror to her guards, now focused, unbreakable. He nodded, pride, fear, and love mingling in silent currents between them. The shuttle sliced through the black, the hull shuddering as Ganymede's battered surface drew near. Through the viewport, Jupiter loomed, striped with storms, impossibly vast. The moon itself sprawled below in ridges of blue-white ice and deep shadowed valleys. As the craft settled on the landing platform, Marcus was already reaching for Zephyra's protective suit. She donned the exosuit, its shimmering membrane adjusting to her delicate Lurian physiology. Marcus checked every seal twice, his motions efficient, his expression unreadable. "You do not have to do this," he murmured one last time. Zephyra met his gaze, unflinching. "I choose to." The airlock cycled. Cold, thin wind rushed in as the ramp descended. Ganymede's atmosphere was barely breathable, even in a suit. Marcus strode down first, his body moving as though the crushing gravity was nothing. He extended a gloved hand. Zephyra took it, stepping into the harsh alien light. The gravity struck her at once, an invisible, merciless force. Her knees buckled, pain lancing through her bones. She fell hard, the impact jarring through the suit, her vision swimming with panic. The bond exploded with agony, terror, and helplessness. Marcus caught her, kneeling effortlessly at her side, arms steady as rock. "Breathe," he commanded, his voice a lifeline threading through the panic. She clung to him, gasping, her mind tumbling. "It hurts. Marcus, I can't." He gathered her in his arms, supporting her weight as if she were made of mist. "Listen to me. Feel my body, my strength. Let the pain become background, noise you can ignore." He opened himself fully through the bond, letting her sense the calm certainty that lived in his bones. The weight of Ganymede's gravity became less crushing, the pain ebbing as his discipline flooded her mind. Zephyra focused on his breath, matching the rhythm, letting herself drown in his steadiness. Slowly, her panic receded, replaced by awe at his effortless command of this brutal place. The landscape spread out around them, ice cliffs glinting beneath the pale sun, Jupiter's great eye brooding overhead. She saw it all through Marcus's senses, the subtle play of light on the ridges, the way the wind sang in the chasms, the ever-present pressure pressing her closer to the ground. She managed a weak laugh, her lips trembling behind her visor. "You grew up in this? No wonder you are as immovable as a glacier." He grinned, the expression rare and honest. "It made me what I am. What? It taught me to survive, to adapt." They moved together, Marcus guiding Zephyra in slow, deliberate steps. Each motion was a lesson: how to shift her weight, when to rest, how to let his strength become hers through the bond. The pain never vanished, but it became bearable. A challenge, not a defeat. As they crossed a ridge overlooking the frozen plains, Zephyra squeezed his hand. "I needed to see this," she said, voice reverent. "Your world, your burden. I wanted to understand." Marcus watched her, pride and vulnerability tangled in the space between them. "Now you know what it costs, to carry this gravity, to carry me." She shook her head, fierce. "I do not carry you. We carry each other." The wind picked up, swirling around them. Zephyra let herself lean into Marcus's embrace, her exhaustion melting into gratitude. For the first time, she felt the true depth of their union, not merely a bond of duty or shared survival, but a partnership forged in the harshest places, enduring where lesser ties would shatter. Together, they stood on the ice, Jupiter's storms rolling above, the past year's trials crystallized in the silence between their joined hearts. Marcus held her a moment longer, guiding her through the agony with the same unwavering will that had first anchored her soul to his. "Breathe," he whispered again, and she did, filling her lungs with Ganymede's thin, bitter air, and with the knowledge that, whatever came next, they would face it together. Marcus carried Zephyra through the subterranean colony, a maze of functional chambers deep beneath Ganymede's crust. The tunnels were narrow and spare, their walls a patchwork of composite alloy and ancient groaning rock. Above, ice groaned and shifted with the constant stress of the moon's tides. Marcus moved with practiced ease, Zephyra's slight weight nothing against his strength, but every step brought a new surge of pain through the bond. Zephyra tried to hide it, but Marcus felt the tremors racking her muscles, the dizzying helplessness. He laid her gently on his cot, a narrow bunk bolted to the floor in a cell-like chamber that passed for a bedroom in this world. Zephyra barely noticed the utilitarian surroundings. The world was reduced to Marcus's hands, steady, warm, undoing the seals of her exosuit with careful reverence. He spooned nutrient broth into her mouth, lifting her head with infinite patience when she sagged. When she managed a weak smile, he returned it with a quiet pride that radiated through the bond. Her limbs trembled uncontrollably. Marcus massaged her calves, working the knots from muscle and tendon, his thumbs tracing firm, reassuring circles. Each touch eased the ache, replacing the sensation of crushing gravity with the comfort of his presence. She was utterly helpless, but for once there was no shame, only the strange, sweet safety of being cared for by someone who would never judge her weakness. He pressed a flask to her lips. "Drink," he murmured, slowly. "Let it settle." Zephyra obeyed, her eyes closing as the warmth spread through her chest. "You make it bearable," she whispered. "Even this." His hand lingered on her cheek, thumb brushing the hollow beneath her eye. "You are stronger than you know. Most could not survive even a single hour here." She laughed, a shaky sound. "I only survive because of you." He looked away, uncomfortable with praise, but his pride pulsed in the bond. He busied himself with mundane tasks, resetting the monitors, checking the seal on the door, but his attention never left her. Zephyra watched him, her awe growing. Here, far from the palace, stripped of all pretense, Marcus was more himself than she had ever seen, a creature of discipline, forged in pressure, but capable of gentleness that humbled her. A low, distant rumble shook the walls. The cot vibrated beneath her. A warning klaxon bleated, then died as the lights flickered and vanished, plunging the chamber into pitch blackness. Cold crept in, immediate and total. "Marcus?" Zephyra's voice trembled, her fear spiking through the bond. He was already moving, every motion purposeful. "Stay here. I'll restore backup power." He found her hand in the dark, squeezing it. "I will not leave you." She heard him at the far wall, the scrape of metal and the thud of a panel opening. A spark flared, illuminating his face for a heartbeat, jaw set, eyes hard with focus. Another tremor rattled the room, but Marcus worked methodically, coaxing the ancient circuits to life. After a long moment, a pale emergency light flickered on, painting everything in ghostly blue. Marcus returned, wrapping her in his thermal cloak, tucking it around her shoulders. He sat beside her on the cot, his presence blocking the cold. The tremor was minor, the backup will hold. But Zephyra's fear lingered. Of the alien dark, the press of unyielding stone above her. Her breath hitched, panic threatening to unravel her. She clutched his arm, knuckles white. Marcus cradled her, voice low and even. "You are safe, with me." She closed her eyes, letting herself drift in the shelter of his will. The bond shimmered, and in the dark, Zephyra shared memories she had never spoken aloud. The echoing loneliness of palace corridors, the weight of a crown she'd never chosen, the hunger for connection that had driven every reckless act. Her longing and isolation poured through the link, raw and unvarnished. Marcus answered with his own. The pride of survival on a world that killed the weak, the pain of loss, the rigid discipline that had been both armor and prison. He let her feel it all, the agony and the triumph, the way Ganymede had shaped him, made him unyielding. She wept silently, not from pain, but from understanding. Marcus wiped away her tears, the gesture gentle, reverent. "You are not alone," he whispered. "Not here. Not ever." The lights brightened, humming as the full grid returned. Warmth seeped back into the room. Zephyra blinked away the last of her tears and flexed her fingers. Slowly she pushed herself upright, testing her body. Her legs still trembled, but the pain had dulled. Marcus knelt beside her, hands ready to steady her if she faltered. "I want to stand," Zephyra said, determination glinting in her eyes. Marcus nodded. "Lean on me. Take it one breath at a time." She rose, leaning heavily on his arm. Each step was a battle, a contest between her will and Ganymede's crushing pull. But step by step, she found her balance. Marcus guided her down a narrow passage to a viewport set into the rock. Outside, Ganymede stretched into forever, vast plains of fractured ice, Jupiter's storms swirling overhead, the raw, indifferent beauty of a world that yielded nothing easily. Zephyra pressed her hand to the glass, awe blooming in her chest. Through the bond, Marcus felt it, the wonder, the dawning respect, and something deeper, brighter. She turned to him, eyes shining. "You belong here," she said, voice trembling with revelation. "You are part of this place, and now, so am I." He reached out, rough fingers brushing her jaw. Through the bond, her awe and love surged, raw, undeniable. Marcus's own feelings came in return: pride, relief, gratitude, and an iron tenderness that defied words. Zephyra leaned forward, tracing the line of his jaw, her touch electric. "You are my anchor, Marcus, my shield, but I am yours as well, not as a trophy, but as your equal. I make your strength mean something." He bent, pressing his forehead to hers. Their lips met, gentle at first, then deepening. A kiss not born of desperation, but of recognition. The bond blazed between them, a circuit completed, a promise sealed in the heart of his world. When they parted, Zephyra smiled, exhaustion melting into peace. "I am home," she whispered, "not in Luria or on Ganymede, but here, between us." Marcus wrapped his arms around her, holding her against the cold, against the universe itself. The marking on her skin glowed softly, the rune now a perfect circle. The bond, once a cage, was at last a sanctuary. Far away, in the shadows of the palace Zephyra once called home, something stirred. A creature, more shadow than substance, flickered between dimensions, its angles impossible, its claws glinting with alien hunger. It moved with silent purpose, slipping through walls, leaving only a cold shudder in its wake. Marcus and Zephyra's greatest test still awaited, a threat not just to their lives, but to the very fabric of the bond they had fought so hard to forge. That's the end of the story. You can leave us a tip or become a channel member. This greatly helps our team improve the quality of our videos. You can send a tip using the Super Thanks button right below the video. We truly appreciate each and every one of you who has subscribed and supported us. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and write in the comments what you liked most about this story. Our team will be very grateful to you. You can find even more fascinating stories on our channel. See you in the next video.